Hi, We Care Arts family. This is Caitlin. I'm here at my home studio, and today we're going to do a watercolor tutorial. So we're just going to learn a few fun things about how watercolor works and how to make it best work for you. And then we are going to make this pretty poppy painting, okay? So here's what we're going to start off with. You want 2 containers of water. This can be just in a cup, or I use mason jars. You're gonna want clean water and dirty water. I've got a couple brushes here. I've got like a big one, a medium one, and a little one. For watercolors, it's great to have kind of more round pointed brushes, but this is what I have, so this is what we're gonna do. And we're gonna make it work. Then I just got my watercolor kit here and a paper towel. And for paper, this is like kind of thick watercolor paper, and you do want to use a thicker paper for watercolor. Okay, so to start off with, we're just going to experiment a little bit. And it's great when you start with dry paint, just kind of get the colors wet a little bit. I'm just dripping a little bit of water in each of them, and that's going to help the paint move, okay? Then I'm just going to clean out my brush and just do that in my dirty water. Just make a figure 8 pattern. When I rinse it off, just gently scrape the extra water, and we're ready to go. The first thing you can do, we're going to do a wet on wet technique. So with just water, I'm just painting just a little bit of water on here so it's just wet. And then with my watercolor, putting it on, and it just really kind of gets really washy, right? Which is cool. So you get kind of this beautiful kind of soft washy look. The second technique is going to be wet on dry. So just with our paint on the dry paper. So wet my brush a little bit, dip it in the paint. Okay, and so that's wet on dry, so you can do more precise lines here. It might get a little bit draggy when you're doing the wet on dry. I don't know if you can see just a little bit getting draggy there. All you've got to do is just dip your brush in and make it a little wetter, okay? And so the wet on dry, that's a great to get like some nice, more sharp shapes, more defined. And the great thing about this is you can always go in on top, and again with my paint, and put a little bit of dark on top, and you can start to get a really nice like shading effect. So like today we're gonna do our poppies. So to do that, we're just gonna start with some kind of basic petal shapes. So I'm gonna rinse my brush in the dirty water, rinse it in the clean, and now my brush is totally clean, so I can do any color. Let's just do a red one. And there's a couple of shapes you can do, which is really cool. So we're going to use the shape of our brush and just kind of press it into the paper, and look how I can make these kind of beautiful petal shapes, right? It's a little bit wet, so I don't want it to drip. But it looks super organic, so beautiful. So like this is going to be the back petal. Just add a little bit of more interest here, bring it up. Again, I'm totally just kind of relying on my paint and my brush to do the heavy lifting here. I'm really just kind of pressing my brush and dragging it gently in the paper. So here's a side petal, another side petal. Then I'm going to go ahead and do this bottom petal. So see, this is just kind of the basic start of a flower, okay? Another thing I can do, I want to do my red paint, use kind of more of the tip of my brush and make almost like kind of just like a fan line. Again, my brush is doing a lot of the work for me. So see how I've kind of got a fan shape? And I can just kind of buff it out a little bit, make it a little thicker, and then add some side petals. Again, just kind of a basic shape for a flower. The fun thing about watercolor here really is we're doing something natural, which is a flower, and it's never going to look perfect. It's never going to look, totally symmetrical or just really crisp lines. So that's going to be to our benefit. So we can just do what we want to do. Just kind of explore with the paint. Just kind of see different things, and it's going to turn out great. So like, again, if this is my petal, I can go back and add a little bit more color deep in the side. And even I'm going to add a little bit of orange here too. So I can really just blend this color so beautifully right in here. And it's just layering on top. And again, the paint and the brush are doing the work for you almost. So see how beautifully that blends together? All right, so those were just a couple brief introductions, and we're gonna get started on making our beautiful spring poppy painting, okay? So, we're ready to paint our spring poppies. And I'm just gonna start with my big brush, get it a little wet, mix a little bit of my red and white together to start with almost like a pink shade. In the middle of my paper, I'm just gonna kind of let my brush push it into the paper and make this kind of beautiful petals, okay? They want to be really close together. And again, this is not about being perfect or anything. You're just kind of, going along and do your painting, and it's going to look great no matter what, right? So don't worry about like, this is looking weird, it's not looking weird, it's looking good. Okay, so I've kind of just got just a little bit of a flower shape here. Okay, so that's the beginning of my flower, right? Again, this may not look like much, but we're gonna build it up and it's gonna be really pretty. Okay, so then I can go ahead and kind of mix, again, I'm doing white and red to get a pink. I'm gonna add a little bit of purple in there just to spice it up. I'm just gonna kind of right around the edges do just a little bit of a harder line, just on a couple. And that's gonna kind of start giving me a blended look, okay? All right, next flower I'm gonna do, rinse my brush a little bit, figure 8 in the water, dip it into clean water, and I'm gonna go more for just kind of a classic red, okay? So I'm gonna do my red, and this is kind of the second style that we did in our practice. So almost just creating like a fan with our lines. So that's kind of the base right there. Then give it a little bit on top, okay? So separate it a little bit from the bottom. Just adding in almost just like a little layer on top. Add some side pieces as well. So this is like a little bit of a side petal. And there I go. So I'm going to do a little bit of shading like I did on the other one. Again, I'm just going to kind of use my purple just right around the edges there. Oh my gosh, look. And it's so pretty how it just blends in all together. Okay, so the base of the second flower is there. Then we're going to move on to the third flower. Rinse out my brush, figure 8, dip it in water, and I prefer to use a thick brush for this one. If you want to use a thinner one, if that would make you feel more comfortable, totally do it. So I'm gonna go in now that my first flower has dried a little bit with a little bit darker red, just right around the very center of the flower. And this is just kind of that wet paint mixing in with the other wet paint. And it really just, it becomes so beautiful. I'm gonna hit a couple just around the edge. And now we can see this is really coming together, okay? Next, I'm gonna pop down, do a little bit of orange. I'm not really even rinsing my brush out. So down right below the kind of big one. Just kind of this organic, beautiful orange shape. My lower petal, my top petal, again, just kind of pushing almost like a fan shape. My bottom petal is the thickest. The others are a little bit thinner, and so you have to think about, so it's like you're looking at a flower face on, so what you're seeing. So that's another one. And the red kind of really picked up. I'm gonna rinse off my brush a little bit and go back for some of that pure orange. Just lightly do like a little circle to kind of give the illusion of this beautiful round flower. Again, don't stress out at all, like, oh my gosh, this isn't looking like it's supposed to. Just kind of keep doing the process. It's gonna look beautiful. I'm gonna use a little bit of my darker red now. Less water means darker paint, so a little darker paint just around the edges here, okay? Just like I was kind of highlighting or emphasizing the other flowers, a little bit of shading. I'm doing that here. Okay. So there we go. So you can see it, yeah, it's the more we work on it, the more kind of it like all comes together. Now I'm gonna rinse my brush again. And we're gonna start another flower. So we're gonna kind of start up in this corner. We're gonna use, again, kind of almost a peach. And really, this also doesn't matter a lot. You can just kind of get however you wanna, any colors are gonna look great in here. So we're doing a flower in between this area. So again, just kind of pushing my brush in, creating these beautiful petals. And see how I'm starting here, like I'm making the flower so it just fits right in between these two existing ones, okay? So I started with the bottom. Just kind of playing with the paint. That's kind of the bottom of the flower. Then we're gonna do the top. It's really washy, really loose. It's fine to have some, like the white, they don't have to all be like one big flower, right? You can kind of like basically kind of pretend like start and then pick up again, and your eye will just assume that that flower is, you know, still there. But it kind of looks a little bit more chic, I think, to do it this way. Okay, so again, this is just kind of the basic shape. I'm gonna rinse my brush, and I'm gonna get some, try and get some deep red here to do right in kind of the center of the flower. And then again on the edges. So I think you're kind of starting to see what I'm doing, right? Paint the flower. It's gonna get like just a couple seconds to dry. Then going back and getting some deeper colors to create some blending and just a little bit more interest. Okay, we are moving. Okay, so now I'm gonna, again, just gonna be kind of more of a red flower, do a little bit of red. I'm gonna just add a tiny bit of purple just to darken it up a little bit, but keep it mostly red. This is gonna be up in this corner. So again, almost it looks a little bit like a boat shape. Oops, see, I moved a little bit, no problem. It's an organic flower. So kind of a make the bottom, then the top, and again, it's kind of a mix between that fan little shape and then just kind of pressing the paint in with my brush. Super loose. Again, we see there's some white in the flower. Just gonna kind of wipe off some of the extra here. Mix a little bit of purple and red for my deeper color. Add in along the bottom, you can't see it, in what would be the middle of the flower, and a little along the edges. And this is still really wet, so it's a little bit hard. Rinse my brush, rinse it in the clean water, and we're gonna do another flower. We're getting there, okay? So I'm just gonna do kind of one down here. It's gonna be more of a pinky orange, so I'm doing orange, white, and again, it doesn't matter any colors you want to do. If you wanted to do these all in like blues and purples, cool. So just a really pretty peachy flower here. So I'm kind of creating, and see, we're using in the negative space. So in the place where there's no flowers, just the white paper. Just make kind of a little bit of a flower shape. And we're gonna go back in with our deeper red. Start to put it together. Okay, we're gonna do one more flower here, and I wanna make this kind of just a really beautiful, like almost magenta, so we'll try with the colors we have. And guys, this is just a really cheap watercolor set, you know? So like you can really use anything. There's definitely more expensive watercolors, which are awesome, but you don't need that, especially when you're just starting off. Okay, so I've got my color here. I'm gonna make kind of this beautiful push my brush in and kind of get these gorgeous petals. Make a petal that comes along the side. Okay, this one is a little bit funky, but we'll just see, it'll work out. So, like I said, don't stress. Okay, so these are gonna be kind of my main flower. So it's like my little group of flowers. I'm gonna take the time to go in right now and kind of, I'm gonna switch to my littler brush, my small, kind of not the tiniest one, but the medium one. So wet it a little bit, and I'm gonna add some of the details in here, okay? So again, I just wanna kind of do a little bit what I was doing when I was adding the darker shades in like the middle and along the edges. We're gonna keep going, okay? So a little bit of water. I'm just gonna kind of start with the first flower that I did. Remember, that was this peachy pink one right in the middle. So I've got a little bit of a dark color, and now that this is dry, it's really gonna make more of an impact. So water with watercolor makes it lighter. The more paint, less water that you use, the darker it's gonna be. So I'm just gonna kind of go along the edges. And again, this isn't like a formula really. I'm just kind of going a little bit where it'll look good, I think. So see what a difference that starts to make. Now is kind of the fun part where we're really seeing some change happening. Okay, so this kind of dark pink, I think I can still use this for some of my other shades, like this kind of pink one in the corner. Let's try that. So again, this one's still pretty wet, but again, just kind of right around the edges. And this is again what I'm saying about how the paint really kind of does the work for you. It just blends out kind of beautifully. So we're starting there. All right, let's get a little redder. So I'm gonna rinse it a little bit, get this just kind of deep red. So this is just a little bit of water and then just red. So on my kind of oranger flowers, again, yeah. Okay, that's pretty. Right in there. So it's almost like you're just kind of taking your brush and just dancing around a little bit on your page. I'm going to use this deep red up on this corner flower too. So again, we're just making those little details. Okay, now I'm going to switch to some purple. Wet my brush a little bit. Okay, so this up in the corner, it's a little bit purple. So I'm going to use my purple. Again, kind of same thing. Yeah, right along the bottom, and you can really see how that's just blending in. And so what we're kind of thinking about when I say kind of in the middle, when you look at a flower and it kind of everything kind of goes towards the center, that's kind of where a shadow would be because it's away from the light. So that's why we're kind of doing we're deepening the color around the center. And then we'll just add a little bit on some of the edges. Okay. You don't want to see any really harsh lines or anything on this either. That's gonna, like I said a little bit earlier, that's just not gonna look natural. When you see, you know, flowers in nature, you're never gonna see something symmetrical. You're not gonna see like a harsh line really. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of finish up, kind of deepening my colors a little bit before I move on. And if it starts to get a little bit draggy, add more water. Okay. Now we're gonna do some stems. So I'm gonna take my little tiny pointed brush. I'm gonna mix just like a dark, and you can see just in here on my side, I'm gonna do just black and green, okay? And we want this color to be pretty deep. Dip it in water. And you're just gonna kind of do stems, right? Again, these should not be straight. They should be a little bit fluid, right? So just from the bottom, from the flower right down to the bottom, okay? Perfect. So all of these, we're just gonna kind of connect. Again, We are not looking for perfection at all. If it starts to get draggy a little bit, dip your brush in water. You can make some kind of crossover. See, this is what I mean by getting a little bit draggy. You can kind of see, and the paper kind of, the tooth of the paper comes through. So just dip it in water. And we're kind of thinking of bouquet, so we kind of want generally all of the stems to go down to the same place. We're not painting over any of the flowers. We're almost done with this. Some can be thicker, some can be thinner. Okay. So I've got all of my stems in, but we're not done yet, okay? So next, I'm just gonna do a few little leaves, okay? So just right over here, again, with that same kind of green and black mixture, almost like a little curlicue. Done a little bit of a leaf there. And I'm gonna do the same thing up top here. This almost looks like a coffee bean to me, I think. And again, I can go back. So this is just red, black, right over top. It's doing that same thing I was doing on the flowers of giving it just a little bit of a deepening and a shade. Okay, so I've got my two little leaves. I'm gonna go ahead and give them a stem. Yeah. And while we're doing this kind of greenery, this is giving our flowers a little bit more of a chance to dry, okay? And we're gonna go in, I'm gonna stick with my little brush. So this is real quick. Okay, so this is all my little stems in here. See, they're not perfect. Okay. Okay, so now that our flowers have had a little bit of a time to dry, I'm gonna go rinse it off in the dirty water, figure 8. Then in my clean water, and I'm gonna kind of start getting into the very center of our poppies, okay? So I've got a clean brush, I'm going into my yellow, okay? And I'm using not a lot of water, and that'll mean that the painting is gonna be a little bit more dark. So it's got more pigment, it's more intense. I'm just gonna start going around almost like little like kind of polka dots, but pressing it a little harder so they're not like perfect polka dots. It'll mix in a little bit right in the center of my flowers, okay? So see how we're starting to get this beautiful yellow pop in the middle of our flowers. So just, yeah, like a little, yeah, just a dot, but not perfect. So some it'll show up really brightly on if it's like on the white area. If it's like on a dark area right now, it's showing up less, but both are good. Having that kind of mixture is really pretty. Okay, so I've added in my yellow. And I want to, again, with my littler brush, I'm rinsing it off. I'm going to get a little bit dark here for kind of that, you know, in the middle of a poppy, you've got not only the yellow, but that kind of black too. So just a little bit of black. You can mix it with green if you want to, almost the same as your stem. And we're getting right in there the same place where we had our yellow almost the same thing, but I would say instead of like the polka dots we did that was a little bit draggy, almost like a tiny dash or a line. But we, again, make it a little bit haphazard. Just don't want to look like perfect little lines in the middle of your flower. That won't really make sense. So see how it bleeds a little bit, and that's good. So it's keeping it a little natural looking. Not all of the flowers should look the same. Again, we're dealing with the natural world here. So everything is going to be a little bit organic. And to me, I think that works really great with what we're doing with our flowers. Okay, and while I'm here, some of my lines I don't love for my stems, so I'm just gonna kind of fix them, clean them up a little bit. Again, dipping it in water is gonna help make a really smooth line. I feel like lines are one of the hardest things to do in painting because you've got to do your best to just keep a steady hand. Okay. Okay, so I'm feeling a little bit better with my stems. Next thing I'm gonna do, okay, so I'll just kind of show us where we are right now. It's looking pretty good, it's coming together. I just kind of want to go back in now that my flowers have dried even more and do a little bit of what I was doing before, kind of add those deepening colors, okay? And the more it's dry, again, the more you paint over dry, the kind of deeper the color is going to be. So I've cleaned up my little brush. I'm just going to kind of go in again, basically what I was doing before, kind of start with a purpley red. Yeah, and again, just adding just a little bit more depth. I'm not being perfect at all. If you want it to blend a little bit, just add water and see that blends it out so pretty. So this is kind of really just making a difference to make the petals look more three-dimensional. And again, I cannot stress this enough. Do not worry about anything looking perfect or not. One of the things I think that's funny about painting is when you're working really up close, like all you can see are the flaws, but once you, like no one is ever going to look at a painting on your wall like this close to it, you know? So always like, I say always hold it back, take a step back. And you can see we're really starting to get some pretty flowers coming together. Okay. So now I'm gonna kind of transition over and a little bit of a dark pink, hit this middle poppy again. So that's a little bit more purpley than I wanted, but that's okay. I'm gonna go with it in the spirit of not being perfect. So that means I'm just gonna make it a little bit more red to get that pink. And really, I mean, you can just kind of do this until you feel like it's good, but we basically kind of did it a couple times. When we first did our painting, we went back in and added just a little bit of deeper color. And then once all the petals were in, we went back and did it one more time. And then a third time after we did our stems and everything. So each time the colors got a little bit drier, we're able to make kind of more impactful choices with our darker colors. Okay, so we're really almost there. I'm excited to see this all finished. And it might be helpful. I know we're kind of going a little bit fast, but you know, you can watch this again and kind of, you know, go at your own pace, pause it, and you know, see what you're doing. Just work at your own pace. But I think watercolor is good. You can kind of, it goes pretty quickly, which is nice. So we're just doing a few finishing touches. I'm gonna go back up to my greenery with my black and do exactly the same thing. Kind of add a little bit of dark. Along the corner. And then I'm gonna say we're about done here. So the finished product, here we go. We've got a beautiful poppy scene, perfect for spring. So yeah, do your own, try experimenting with watercolor, see what you like. Again, it's just about kind of playing, see how the brush looks when you press it against the paper, move the color around. It should be fun. Don't worry about it. Just do it and then, you know, look at it from a distance when it's done. So we've done our first watercolor painting. We've got our beautiful poppies here ready for spring. If you're making these, of course, we want you to take a picture, tag it WCA at home, and we'll be able to share it on our online gallery. All right, thank you for joining me for today's watercolor lesson. Bye-bye.